The night was a blur of color, magenta lights pulsing through waves of cigarette smoke, music pounding hard enough to make the air itself vibrate. Beneath the flashing neon, Enkay's laughter rang out, high and bright, her sequin top catching every burst of light like sparks. Ruth Sidney leaned close, voice raised over the bass. "One last wild night before you're a year older." Evelyn rolled her eyes, grinning. "Ruth, I'm 23, not retiring from life." That's exactly what every soon-to-be 24-year-old says. Ruth pulled out her phone, flipping the camera to selfie mode. "Smile for the memory, birthday girl." Evelyn threw up a peace sign. The camera caught them both, two glowing faces framed in chaos, bodies swaying behind them, laughter cutting through the noise. Ruth angled the phone for a wider shot. "For the record," she said, mock serious, "this is the moment before Enkay officially outgrows the kids' table." Evelyn laughed, bumping her shoulder. "You're impossible." The phone's lens swung for a second. The crowd shimmered. A waiter passed with a tray of glittering drinks. And somewhere near the exit, two men stood watching. One wore a cap pulled low, his face half lit by a rotating red light. The camera lingered on them just long enough to catch the blur of movement before Ruth turned back to her cousin. "Let's get another drink," Ruth said. "Something reckless, like your taste in men," Evelyn teased. Ruth snorted, exactly like that. They wove through the crowd, the music swallowing their voices. The smell of perfume, sweat, and cheap rum mingled in the air. Someone shouted, someone else laughed too loudly. Evelyn paused near the bar, turning toward the exit again. "Do you see those guys?" she asked. "Who?" "The ones standing by the gate. They've been there since we came in." Ruth glanced over her shoulder, phone still in hand. The screen caught only shifting colors and silhouettes. "Probably waiting for someone." "Relax, Kane." Evelyn smiled faintly but didn't look convinced. Still nothing," Ruth said, pressing the phone back between them. "Come on, say something for the camera before I post this." Evelyn rolled her eyes but leaned in again, laughing. "To 23, and to bad decisions we'll lie about later." They clinked invisible glasses and giggled. But somewhere behind the laughter, a chair scraped sharply, a sound too distinct to be part of the song. Ruth's phone kept recording. The light flickered. Someone brushed past, fast. The frame shook, but the camera held steady, a little longer than it should have. Then motion. A blur crossing the light, a sharp cry. Evelyn's voice cut short. "Evie," Ruth said, turning. The camera dropped sideways, catching a full frame, then fragments. Shoes, a spilled drink, legs rushing past. "Evie!" A scream tore through the music. The phone hit the ground. Its flashlight blinked once, twice, then went dark. The screen froze on a final sliver of motion. The shadow, the glint of a ringed hand reaching down. And then nothing. Morning sunlight poured through the tall windows of the Kane estate, cutting soft streaks across the marble floor. The house was dressed for celebration. White roses in crystal vases, satin ribbons curling around chairbacks, a towering cake gleaming beneath a chandelier's gold glow. It was the kind of quiet extravagance only the Kanes could afford. Lavish, yet private. Only family and a few close friends filled the wide sitting room, murmuring over champagne and laughter that felt slightly forced. Mrs. Kane moved between guests with a polished smile that kept slipping at the edges. "She's probably just taking her time," she said, as if repetition could make it true. "You know, Evelyn, she loves making an entrance." Her sister Vivian set down her glass. "It's nearly noon, Catherine. How long does one take to make an entrance?" Mr. Kane stood by the grand piano, hands clasped behind his back, watching the clock above the mantel. The minute hand seemed to mock him. "She's a grown woman," he said flatly. "She's probably with friends. She'll show up when she's ready." A ripple of unease threaded through the room. The younger cousins whispered near the cake, giggling at first, then falling silent when they noticed the adults' faces. The decorator's playlist played soft jazz now, a poor disguise for the waiting. Mrs. Kane's voice thinned. "Robert, she didn't call this morning. She always calls, even when she's running late." "She'll walk in," he insisted. "Let's not spoil the day with panic." But the calm in his voice felt manufactured. His gaze flicked toward the staircase. Once, twice, each time longer. A housemaid entered quietly from the hall, clutching a folded napkin. "Sir," she began, hesitant, "Miss Evelyn's room is still untouched. Her bed hasn't been slept in." Mrs. Kane froze. "What do you mean untouched?" "No shoes missing, ma'am. No clothes changed from yesterday. Her phone isn't there either. The room went still. Even the music seemed to hesitate mid-note. Vivian rose from her chair. Catherine, she said softly, perhaps we should. Mrs. Kane's hand trembled around her glass. She wouldn't just disappear. Not today. Not on her birthday. Mr. Kane moved to the window, looking out over the bright gardens, balloons swaying, ribbons fluttering like ghosts. Check again, he said to the maid. Everywhere. Ask the gatehouse if anyone saw her car leave. Yes, sir. When the maid left, the silence returned, thick, heavy. Mrs. Kane finally sat, her voice a whisper. Something's wrong, Robert. He didn't answer. The candles on the untouched cake flickered, their flames steady, patient, waiting for a girl who was no longer there. Ruth's call came in a little later than 10 a.m. Her voice was quick. Mummy, it's Ruth. We just went partying, just for the night. Something happened. They took Evie. Mrs. Catherine nearly lost it. Her eyes flickered to Richard, who could tell that it was a bad call. It's Ruth. She said someone took Evelyn. Within minutes, an SUV drove out of the mansion, headed to the party location. At the bar that morning, empty cups and broken bottles littered the soil. The music long gone, but the memory of it still trembling faintly in the air. A dented patrol van idled near the gate. 2 local police officers leaned against it, looking tired and unimpressed. Same nonsense every weekend, one of them said, waving lazily toward the mess. Rich kids in their night drama. His partner gave a dry laugh. You'd think they'd outgrow this nonsense once they start paying their own bills. Ruth Sidney sat slumped against a concrete block, her hair matted, her face streaked with dust and tears. Her blouse was torn, one sleeve dangling loose. She stared at the ground as if trying to remember what ground even meant. Miss, one of the officers called out half-heartedly. You all right? Ruth didn't answer. Probably drunk, the other muttered, nudging an empty bottle with his boot. Or high. The rich ones always wake up crying after a wild night. One of them scribbled something in a small notebook, barely legible, before snapping it shut. What about the other girl? A young constable asked quietly. They said there were 2 of them. The senior officer shrugged. Nobody's here now. No blood, no body. If she's missing, she'll come home when she's hungry. At that instance, the SUV that left Richard's mansion minutes ago rolled up the dirt road. It stopped beside the patrol van, and 3 men in plain suits stepped out, tall, composed, expressionless. The lead one showed a laminated card. We're with Mr. Richard Kane's security detail, he said. We'll take it from here. The officer arched a brow. Oh? So this one's one of those Kanes? The man didn't answer. He simply walked past, crouched beside Ruth, and spoke softly. Miss Sidney, it's all right. You're safe now. Ruth blinked up at him, eyes unfocused. They took her, she whispered. They took Evelyn. The officer nearby snorted. Sure they did. The security men ignored him. One of them fetched a blanket from the car, draped it over Ruth's shoulders, then helped her to her feet. We'll take her home, the leader said curtly. Hey, hold on, the officer protested weakly. We might still need a statement. The man's gaze was calm but final. You won't get one tonight. They guided Ruth toward the sedan. She stumbled once, her phone fell off and she picked it up. Then she leaned heavily against the man's arm, whispering fragments. They took her. Words that vanished beneath the hum of the engine. The police watched them drive off, indifferent. Case closed, the older officer said, lighting a cigarette. His partner frowned. You sure? The girl looked serious. She's lucky to be alive, came the reply. Whatever happened here, it's not our problem now. By the time the security team reached the Kane estate, the late morning sun had intensified into the bright gold of early afternoon. The celebration decorations still hung in the sitting room, ribbons and flowers now seeming foolishly bright against the thick tension that filled the air. Half of the invitees gone. Ruth Sidney sat motionless on the couch, wrapped in a shawl, her skin pale under the chandelier light. A maid dabbed her bruised temple with a wet cloth, but her eyes stayed vacant, fixed on something only she could see. Catherine Kane stood nearby, one hand on the mantelpiece, the other gripping a folded napkin she hadn't realized she was crushing. Her husband Richard paced behind her, every step echoing through the marble. Where did you find her? And where is my daughter? Catherine asked softly. One of the security teams picked her up near the grounds, said Daniel, the head of Richard's private staff. The local police were already there, but what? Richard snapped. Daniel hesitated. They weren't taking it seriously, sir. Thought it was just another night party incident. Silence spread like smoke. Catherine's gaze drifted toward the staircase, her voice breaking. "It's her birthday, Richard." He said nothing. His jaw was set tight, eyes fixed on the floor, until one of the housemaids gasped. "Sir, ma'am, please look at this." She held out a small, folded slip of paper, creased and smudged with dirt. "I found it," she whispered. "Clipped to the inside of Miss Ruth's dress." Richard took it. His fingers hesitated only once before unfolding it. The handwriting was crude, hurried. Block letters pressed hard into the page. 0.5 BTC. 7 days, or she's gone forever. No name, no instructions, just the cold clarity of business. Catherine's breath caught. "What does that mean? Richard, isn't that a ransom? Evelyn has been kidnapped?" Richard didn't answer immediately. His eyes traced the digits, the half-Bitcoin demand, the threat so absolute in its brevity. Who would even... Catherine stopped, shaking her head. "Why her? Why Evelyn?" Across the room, Ruth stirred for the first time. Her voice was faint, raw. "They knew her name," she whispered. "They said, the girl in the video." Everyone turned. "What video?" Richard demanded. Ruth blinked, confusion fogging her tone. "My phone, I was recording before it happened." Her words trailed off, her eyes filled with fresh tears as she produced her phone. Catherine reached for her composure unraveling. "Oh God, Evelyn." Richard's expression hardened. "Daniel," he said quietly, handing him the note. "Get this verified, discreetly. Not the police yet, not until I say so." "Yes, sir." As the staff moved about, lowering their voices and closing curtains, the mansion seemed to shrink, the air dense with unspoken fear. Catherine sat beside Ruth, holding her trembling hand. "We'll get her back," she said, though her own voice wavered. Ruth nodded faintly, but her eyes had already drifted away again, back to the empty space only she could see. The mansion had gone still. Richard Kane sat in his study, the ransom note spread before him on the desk. A single lamp burned above, its yellow light catching the sharp angles of his face. The words, 0.5 BTC, 7 days, or she is gone forever, stared back like something alive. He traced the letters with a steady finger, though his jaw worked tight. Behind the heavy door, faint sobs, carried from the corridor, Catherine's voice, raw, muffled by the oak. Richard exhaled, long and controlled. "This is no prank," he murmured. He reached for his phone, pressed a number from memory. "Get me Jonathan Hale," he said quietly. In less than an hour, the study door opened. 3 figures stepped in. Jonathan Hale led the way. Tall, braided hair, his calm presence shaped by decades of handling other people's secrets. Behind him came Marcus Reed, broader, restless, his eyes scanning the room as if measuring threats. Last was Lizzie Cross, tablet in hand, her gaze sharp, already awake to what needed cleaning up. "Sir," Hale greeted, voice low, "you said it's urgent." Richard gestured toward the desk. "Read it." Marcus leaned forward, letting out a short whistle. "Half a Bitcoin? Sounds like a kidnap for a ransom, sir. How would you want us to proceed?" 7 days, Richard cut in. "That's what it said. It's mockery to me. I want her found, fast." A quiet knock sounded, and the door opened just enough for Catherine to appear. Her eyes were rimmed red, but her voice was steady, a mask over collapse. "Richard, please tell me you've called the police." He didn't look at her. "Not yet." "Not yet?" Her disbelief cracked into anger. "She's our daughter, not some corporate problem to manage." Hale exchanged a discreet glance with Marcus. Richard rose from his chair, his shadow stretching across the carpet. "You think I don't know that? The police will leak this in an hour. Every blog, every channel, every competitor will have it. And then what? They'll feed on our name before they even look for her." Catherine's voice trembled. "Not another business feud, Richard. We can't survive another scandal. You're gambling with her life." Richard's voice softened, but the steel remained beneath. "No, I'm protecting it. If she's alive, we'll find her. If this is something else..." He stopped there. Hale folded the ransom note carefully, sliding it into a plastic sleeve. "We'll begin immediately. Marcus, pull up possible suspects. Lizzie, I want the party grounds grid and all linked surveillance within 3 blocks." Marcus nodded. "On it." Lizzie's fingers flew over her tablet. "Already pulling traffic cam access." Catherine's voice broke again. "And if the kidnappers reach out..." Richard looked toward the window, the fading light brushing against his profile. "Then," he said quietly, "they'll realize who they're dealing with." The day after the ransom note, the Kane mansion had lost its elegance. Curtains stayed half-drawn, food trays untouched. In the study, the investigation board had grown dense with photographs, printed phone logs, and red ink circles drawn in frustration. Marcus Reed leaned over the desk, dropping a fresh file. "Pulled a list of everyone who's had an ugly past with Evelyn," he said. "Family feuds, ex-employees, jealous acquaintances." Hale looked up from his notes, and few names stand out, with Damian Cole at the top of it. Her ex, the one she dumped in front of a crowd at that art gala last year. He didn't take it well. Lizzie arched a brow. That's an understatement. His social posts were a bonfire. Betrayal, humiliation, all caps heartbreak. Richard Kane, standing by the window, folded his arms. "She is young. She makes mistakes. But if this man blames her..." Marcus shut the file with a snap. "Then we'll find out how far that blame goes." In less than an hour, the team arrived at Damian's residence. The building leaned with age, its paint peeling like tired skin. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the bitter smell of unwashed dishes. Damian Cole opened the door after a few knocks, bleary-eyed and shirt half-buttoned. "Private eyes now," he scoffed. "What's next, the Secret Service?" Jonathan Hale stepped forward, calm and professional. "We're investigating Evelyn Kane's disappearance." Damian's face twisted, half sneer, half smirk. "Disappearance or another one of her dramas?" Marcus's voice cut through the air. "You tell us." Damian laughed, hollow. "You think I'd kidnap her? After what she did to me?" His voice rose. "She humiliated me in front of 200 people, made me look like a fool. You don't forget that. You don't forgive it either." "She deserved to be humbled," he muttered, almost to himself. Lizzie, recording discreetly, asked, "Where were you the night she vanished?" "At a bar," Damian said. "Cole's on Rose Street. I was with a bunch of guys. You could check that out. Do your thing." Marcus stepped closer, crowding him. "Your neighbor claims he heard you saying you'd visit the Kane mansion the same night." "Then my neighbor's a liar." His eyes flared. "You rich types think everything revolves around you. Maybe she finally learned that it doesn't." Hale raised a hand, steadying the tension. "We'll confirm your story. Don't leave town." Damian shrugged, but his jaw clenched. "Where would I go? She already took everything worth leaving for." Later that night inside the study, with the low hum of computers, Lizzie's screen glowed blue, replaying bar footage. Damian at a counter, time-stamped through midnight, laughing with a bartender. Marcus swore under his breath. "CCTV clears him." "First lead's dead," Hale said quietly, marking an X across Damian's photo. Richard said nothing, his reflection blurred in the glass as he stared into the darkness beyond. The hours dragged. Lizzie stifled a yawn, scrolling through phone records. Hale, still at the board, traced lines between names, his concentration absolute. Marcus tossed a pen down. "We're wasting time. We should break someone open, hard." Lizzie didn't look up. "Data doesn't bleed, Marcus." He smirked. "Maybe that's the problem." Hale turned from the board, exhaustion buried behind calm resolve. "No, the problem is that someone out there thinks they're smarter than all of us." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The night thickened. And in the glow of the investigation board, Evelyn Kane's photo watched them all, smiling, frozen, untouchable, as if she knew they were already running out of time. By the third morning, fatigue had settled into the Kane estate like a permanent guest. Hale's board was now a sprawl of faces, places, and red strings that no longer looked like a plan, just evidence of obsession. Marcus flipping through a new caller, eyes shadowed with lack of sleep. "Victor Marlowe," he said, tapping the name. "Goes by V, runs the Lucent Lounge downtown. Had a long-standing issue with Evelyn." Lizzie leaned back in her chair. "Yeah, she used to crash his club with her friends, loud, reckless. She'd pull the 'my father's name opens doors' card when things got tense." Richard, standing by the window, said nothing. His silence was permission. Hale nodded once. "Let's pay Mr. Marlowe a visit." Victor Marlowe's office sat behind tinted glass, modern, cluttered with designer sneakers, half-empty whiskey bottles, and LED lighting that pulsed faintly even with the music off. V leaned back in a leather chair, gold chain glinting at his throat. "Private investigators," he said, smirking. "Finally. I was starting to wonder when Daddy Kane would send his cleanup crew." "Well, she hasn't been here for 2 weeks now. Sounds a bit off, but I like it. At least things have been orderly here." Hale kept his tone neutral. "Glad to hear that. However, we're here to ask of her, Evelyn Kane." "Ah." V's grin faltered into a sneer. I get to account for her now? Marcus folded his arms. You had bad blood with her. Bad blood? V laughed once. She humiliated me in my own club, drinks more than she can contain, messed with the staff, threw money at people like confetti. I told her to calm down. She told me I was irrelevant, made me feel so small before my customers. V, with my level and the weight I pull in this city, you don't humiliate a man like me without consequences. But with a father like hers, yeah, you could guess. Next morning, I get a call from city licensing, inspection on my books. That family thinks consequences are optional. Hale slid a photo across the desk, a shot of Evelyn outside the club from less than a month ago. You saw her recently? 2 weeks back. Same drama, different night. She tossed her drink, screamed something about no one owning her. Then she left with some friends. Marcus's voice hardened. Your car was spotted near the party ground the night she vanished. V frowned. That can't be right. My driver had the car. I lent it out for a promotion gig. Funny coincidence, Marcus said. Coincidences keep my business running, V shot back. You think I'd risk kidnapping a cane? I like breathing. Lizzie glanced down at her tablet, scrolling fast. Suspicious deposits in your account, 3, all within 48 hours of her disappearance. Those are sponsorship transfers, V replied sharply. Check the ledger, club events, brand partners, all legal, you'll see. She checked again and nodded affirmative to Hale. Marcus muttered something under his breath. Hale rose from his seat, smoothing his jacket. Thank you for your time, Mr. Marlowe. V smirked again. Tell Catherine Kane to stop sending hired shadows. If her daughter wanted to live wild a little longer than her age, that's on her. Marcus stiffened, but Hale's glance kept him in check. They left the office to the fading echo of V's laughter. That night in the study, coffee cups crowded the edge of the desk. Marcus had fallen asleep in a chair, jacket draped over his shoulder. Lizzie typed quietly, eyes half closed, scrolling through new data streams. Hale stood before the board again, same clothes as the day before, tie loosened, eyes rimmed red. Another dead end, another night of absence. He picked up the ransom note from the corner of the desk, the paper now soft from handling, and whispered to no one. Somebody's laughing at us. Lizzie yawned, shutting her tablet. We should rest. Marcus stirred in his sleep. We should break someone, he muttered. Lizzie gave a tired smirk without looking up. Doubt it doesn't bleed, Marcus. The rain started, tapping the windows like fingertips. Hale didn't move, just kept staring at the board. The same photo of Evelyn, that same unreachable smile, until the house sank into silence and the night pressed in. The next morning began gray and heavy. The team drove through narrow streets until the polished world of the Kanes disappeared behind them. Tasha Miller's flat was small and cluttered, a single room where clothes, books, and unpaid bills competed for space. The television flickered with a muted morning show, the only light apart from a crooked lamp. Tasha stood at the door in a worn sweater, arms crossed. Her expression wasn't grief, it was guarded resentment. You're here about Evelyn, she said before Hale could speak. Yes, Hale replied evenly. We're trying to understand the people closest to her. Tasha gave a dry laugh. Closest? That's rich. We haven't spoken in 2 years. Anyways, if you guys want to come in, that's fine. They followed Tasha. Hale sat on an old sofa while both Lizzie and Marcus remained standing. Tasha sank into the other side of the sofa, her eyes never leaving Hale. Marcus stepped forward, flipping open his notebook. You were college friends. Roommates for a while. I was her bodyguard, Tasha said bitterly. Back when she didn't know who she was. I took punches for that girl, defended her when everyone else thought she was spoiled. Then she grew up, joined the loud crowd, and forgot who helped her get there. Lizzie glanced around the room, taking in the peeling paint and unpaid bills. What happened? Tasha hesitated, then shrugged. Graduation party. She was just different that night. Loud, laughing at me for not dressing rich enough. Said I was jealous she got into the Kane lifestyle. Everyone laughed. That was the last time I saw her. Marcus leaned forward slightly. You ever wish her harm? Tasha's voice sharpened. I wish she'd learn humility. That's different. She dropped me like trash, like I was never real. So yeah, she deserves every bad thing that finds her. Her eyes glistened, but her tone stayed flat. Lizzie checked her tablet. You've made some angry posts about her online. Tasha shrugged. Words. Everyone posts things when they're mad. Marcus's tone hardened. You said, and I quote, one day the world will silence her. That was 2 years ago, she snapped. I didn't mean anything. You think I can afford to get to her in that manner? I don't even have rent money. Hale studied her for a moment, calm, steady, reading between her words. Where were you the night she disappeared? Home, she said, alone, watching TV. No witnesses, no alibi. You can write that down too. Lizzie met Hale's eyes and shook her head subtly. No digital trail, no money movement, no travel, no calls. Marcus closed his notebook with a sigh and a frustrating whisper. Another dead end. Tasha's voice softened slightly as they turned to leave. You think I hurt her? But you don't get it. Evelyn never needed enemies. She made them herself. Later that night, the rain returned, soft at first. Hale sat at the desk again, shoulders heavy, staring at the board. Evelyn's photo hung there, the same laughing face now surrounded by more names crossed out in red. Lizzie yawned beside her monitor. Marcus leaned in a corner, scrolling through phone logs he barely believed in anymore. Then Hale's phone rang. He straightened. Mrs. Kane? Catherine's voice trembled through the line. Jonathan, something's come up. A message. Someone posted it on a social page. It says they can make her disappear. Hale's pen stilled. When was this? 2 days ago, under a fake account. I've already sent it to Lizzie. Lizzie opened the file as Hale stayed on the call. A blurry screenshot appeared. A comment beneath an old photo of Evelyn. The handle untraceable. The words blunt. People like you vanish all the time. Marcus muttered. Could be anyone. Internet trash. Lizzie shook her head. Page has no metadata, no geotags, nothing. Just noise. Could be a threat, could be a prank, could be air. Catherine's voice cracked faintly through the phone. I just want her back. Hale exhaled, the exhaustion audible. We're chasing every shadow, ma'am. He ended the call, his reflection staring back from the window, tired eyes, wrinkled shirt, an unanswered case. Lizzie spoke softly. What if it's all random, Jonathan, just chaos? Hale didn't look away from the board. Then somewhere inside that chaos, someone's still hiding her. The rain deepened, blurring the glass. Another night began, and the board waited, one more face away from truth. The house had fallen silent long before midnight. Only the whisper of rain and the faint hum of the generator stirred in the dark. In the larger study, Hale's team slept scattered around the investigation board. Marcus slumped in an armchair, Lizzie half asleep over her laptop, a soft glow still tracing across her face. Jonathan Hale had just begun to close his eyes when the knock came. 3 quiet taps, deliberate. He opened the door to find one of Richard Kane's personal aides waiting in the corridor. Mr. Kane would like to see you, the man said softly, in his private study. The room was smaller than the main study, but darker, heavier, walls lined with books and documents. The air scented faintly of old whiskey and power. Richard Kane stood by the window, hands behind his back, his reflection merging with the black glass. He didn't turn when Hale entered. You've been chasing phantoms, he said quietly. We've been following evidence, Hale replied. It keeps dissolving. Richard exhaled through his nose, then faced him. The lamplight carved deep lines across his face. Because you might be looking in the wrong places. Hale remained still, listening. There's something you need to know, Richard continued. Something I should have said earlier, but I didn't want to believe it could connect. He crossed to the desk, poured a measure of whiskey, and didn't drink it. There is a man, Alexander Drake. He paused as though the name itself carried heat. Once my partner, now my enemy. Hale's brow furrowed. Business rivalry? More than that. Richard's voice dropped low. We built something together. A network that ran deeper than corporate contracts. Offshore accounts, trade routes, unlicensed shipments. Then he wanted more control, and I refused. He took a breath. That refusal cost some lives and many resources. Drake didn't fall apart after that. He built his own world, a rich, ruthless empire that runs parallel to mine. We stopped speaking years ago, but I know the kind of man he's become. He doesn't forgive. A muscle in his jaw tightened. And if this, Evelyn's disappearance, is his doing, then it's personal. It means war. The silence that followed was dense, suffocating. Finally, Hale spoke. You understand what you're implying, that this isn't about ransom or revenge. The ransom might just be a boogie, perhaps to keep us chasing while further plans are made. This would mean leverage. Someone wants you desperate. Well, Jonathan, I'm already there, Richard said softly. I need to know for sure. Find out if it's Drake. I'll handle what comes next. Hale nodded once. Richard looked up. the shadows sharp across his face. Be careful. Men like Drake don't make threats. They make examples. When morning came, with the first light of dawn seeping into the room where the team was gathered again, Hale stood by the board, recounting the night's confession in a measured tone. Marcus was the first to break the silence. So we're not chasing kidnappers anymore. We're walking into a corporate Cold War. Hale nodded slightly. If this is connected, it's not random. It's strategic. Drake's reach is long, his influence deeper than most governments care to admit. Digging into him could set off alarms before we get a single answer. Lizzie rubbed her temples. So we can't confront him. Not directly. Not even through his people. Exactly, Hale said. We move quiet. Indirect. We trace shadows, transactions, shell accounts, travelogues. Anything that whispers his name without saying it out loud. Marcus frowned. That'll take time. Hale's eyes lifted to the ransom note still pinned on the board. Time, he murmured, is what we don't have. Lizzie closed her laptop softly. We'll never beat the deadline going this slow. Hale's answer came low, resolved. Then we work without sleep. The weight of that truth hung in the room. Outside, the day was breaking, but it felt no lighter, only the beginning of a harder, deeper descent. The team fell silent again, each one feeling it, that shift in the air when a case stops being about justice and starts being about survival. By late afternoon, the heat had started to soften into that lazy gold that made the Kane estate look deceptively peaceful. Inside, the house was quiet, too quiet. The PI team had gone nearly 20 hours without a lead. Out on the city's edge, Samuel, the family driver, was humming to himself as he loaded grocery bags into the SUV. The car's glossy black body reflected rows of other parked vehicles under the mall's open-air lot. He moved quickly. Catherine liked her groceries fresh. He had just closed the trunk when something caught his eye. A bright yellow sticker note pressed neatly onto the driver's side mirror. At first, he assumed it was a parking receipt or a prank, but when he peeled it off, his stomach turned to ice. The handwriting was jagged, sharp, and furious. 0.5 BTC. Your boss has 2 days. His fingers trembled. The words felt alive, almost pulsing through the paper. Whoever wrote it knew the car, knew him, knew exactly where to leave the message. He looked around the lot, scanning faces, but everyone looked ordinary. No one lingered. The breeze carried faint music from a nearby stall, and for a strange moment, everything seemed normal again, except his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Samuel climbed into the SUV and drove back to the estate faster than he realized. Catherine was mindlessly sorting through her jewelries when Samuel burst in, breathless. Ma'am, please, he stammered. I found this at the parking lot. She frowned, took the note, and froze mid-breath. The yellow paper looked harmless in her hand, like something meant for a fridge door, but her scream split the still air. Richard! The household froze. Staff stopped mid-step. Ruth, sitting at the edge of the couch, turned sharply, and Hale's team came rushing from the study. Richard Kane entered quickly, his composure masking a flicker of dread. Catherine thrust the note at him. They followed our driver. They are warning us. He read the words on the paper slowly. The muscles in his face barely moved, but the color drained away. He folded the paper once, twice, then crushed it in his hand, the sound brittle in the silence. Catherine's eyes filled. Richard, please, this has gone too far. Just pay them. Lizzie looked at Hale uneasy. That was left at a public lot. Someone followed the car, dropped it there. They're still controlling the pace. Marcus muttered, they're pulling us by the nose. Hale said nothing at first, only studying the note in Richard's fist. It's deliberate. They're reminding us of the terms, forcing urgency. Based on what I've found about this Drake, this isn't his style. Richard's gaze flicked to him. Yeah, that I know. Drake doesn't work on deadlines. He doesn't demand. He dismantles. Whoever this is, Hale said quietly, they're smaller, impatient, and scared we might find them first. Catherine cut in, her voice breaking. I don't care who it is. They have Evelyn. Every hour we waste. Richard closed his eyes for a moment, jaw tightening. If we pay, we feed a lie. But if we wait, then silence. Hale finally spoke, voice low. We'll keep searching. That's what I can advise for now. Richard nodded faintly, though his eyes remained on the crushed paper in his hand. Continue, but prepare for payment. We're running out of time. Catherine turned away, sobbing quietly as Ruth held her. For the first time since the investigation began, the house no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like a countdown clock. When evening came, the estate was quiet, heavy with silence, and the clock on the mantel ticked loud enough to be cruel. Catherine Kane sat in the corner of the study, her face pale from exhaustion, her eyes rimmed red. Richard stood by the fireplace, hands in his pockets, staring at the faint reflection of himself in the glass cabinet. Neither spoke for a long while. Finally, Catherine's voice broke the stillness. "Do you know what terrifies me the most, Richard?" He didn't turn. "What?" "That I can't tell if you're worried about Evelyn," she said, her voice trembling. "Or about your reputation." He stiffened slightly. "That's unfair." "Unfair?" she shot back, rising from her chair. "You brought this on us. Your enemies, your pride, your endless wars with people you should have left behind. Evelyn is paying the price for your arrogance." "Catherine." "No." She stepped closer, her voice rising, tears shining under the lamp. "You've built empires on silence, Richard, and now silence is all you have left. Our daughter is gone, and you still care about what the papers will say." Richard's jaw tightened. He didn't respond, couldn't. The words landed where the whiskey and the weight of days had already bruised him. Catherine's voice cracked. "You should have called the police days ago, but no, not Richard Kane, not the man who fixes everything himself." He finally turned, his tone low, even, but edged with pain. "You think I don't feel it? You think I sleep? You think I breathe without hearing her name?" Her tears came harder. "Then do something, Richard. Don't just stand there." Something broke quietly in him then. Without another word, he walked past her and out onto the balcony. At the balcony rail, he pressed his palms against the cold metal. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure if she was wrong or if she was exactly right. Later that night, Catherine sat on the edge of her bed, the room dim. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through her contacts, hesitating over one number, Police Command Headquarters. Her thumb hovered for a heartbeat before she pressed call. The line rang twice. "Abuja City Police, good evening." Catherine took a shaky breath. "This is Mrs. Catherine Kane. My daughter has been kidnapped." Richard was still on the balcony, the wind colder now, when his phone buzzed on the table beside him. He stared at the screen, jaw clenching, as he saw the number. He answered, "This is Richard Kane." "Good evening, sir," the voice on the other end said. "This is the commissioner's office. We've received a report about your daughter. A Mrs. Kane reached out to us." Richard cut in, voice smooth but distant. "Ah, yes, that's nothing too serious, a misunderstanding, a mix-up, really." "Sir, a kidnapping report was—" He interrupted again, a faint lie slipping effortlessly between his teeth. "We can't say that for sure. Anyways, it's being handled privately. You know how teens can be, stubborn, dramatic. It's happened before more than twice. I'll reach out if there's need for formal assistance." The officer hesitated, then replied softly, "Understood, sir." Richard ended the call and stared at the dark phone screen for a long time. His thought drifted to Catherine. He could not blame her for reaching out to the authority. Inside, he could still hear Catherine's muffled sobs through the door. He set the phone down, and for a fleeting moment his hand lingered on it, as if fighting the urge to call back and tell the truth. But instead, he straightened his shoulders, stepped away from the table, and let the night close in. Morning crept into the PI office like a ghost, soft, gray, and unwelcome. The investigation board stood almost bare now. The red strings that once connected names and photos had been stripped away in frustration. Coffee cups, crumpled papers, and empty takeout boxes littered the floor. Marcus sat slouched on the edge of the desk, rubbing his temples. "We've got nothing," he muttered, "when days of running in circles. Every lead we chase dies before we touch it." Lizzie leaned back in her chair, exhaustion dulling her usual sharpness. She stared at the dark monitor. "It's all gone cold." The room was quiet for a beat. Marcus exhaled hard. "If they wanted to break us, they've done it." Hale didn't answer. He sat in the far corner, facing the wall. On it hung photos from old cases, missing persons, fraud rings, closed files stamped in red. His eyes lingered on one photograph. Staged accident. Closed. He knew what that case had cost and how close he had come to losing more than a client. His jaw tightened. Losing Evelyn would be worse. He turned slowly to his team. "Whoever they are, they've managed to bury themselves deep. This isn't a chase anymore. It's a countdown." Lizzie closed her eyes. "Then what do we do?" Hale hesitated, then said what none of them wanted to hear. "We stop pretending we're in control." Inside one of the bedrooms downstairs, Ruth's voice was soft, steady. "She's my sister," she said, squeezing Catherine's trembling hands. "Please, save her." Catherine nodded, tears running silently down her face. "We will, Ruth. We will." But the words sounded hollow, even to her. Upstairs, the study door opened. Hale entered quietly, the lines under his eyes deeper than before. Richard stood at the desk, staring out through the half-open blinds at the manicured lawn beyond. Hale spoke carefully. "We've run through every lead, sir. Everyone. Damien, Victor Marlowe, Tasha Miller, all clean. And it's obvious this isn't Drake's hand. Sir, there's nothing left to pull." Richard turned slightly, his voice low. "That's obvious, Hale. You advise we proceed with the ransom payment?" "That's the reality, sir," Hale said. "We accept it. Whoever did this isn't playing to be found. The ransom note was designed for this outcome." Richard said nothing, only stared at the floor. Hale continued, voice quiet but firm. "If we wait longer, we risk losing her. Completely. The ransom is the only option left." For a moment, the room felt smaller. Richard's eyes flicked toward the folded note on the desk. "How do we even know they'll keep their word?" "We don't," Hale said, "but we know what happens if we don't pay." The words settled like dust. Richard finally looked up, and when he spoke, his voice carried no authority, only fatigue. "Do it," he said. "Just do it." Hale nodded once. "We'll arrange the transfer discreetly. I have no confidence we can track it given the complexity of crypto transactions. If there is any chance, it will take a lot of time and resources. Should we have Evelyn back, then the cost might outweigh the benefit." "I understand," Richard murmured. "Let's do what we can for now." Inside the Kane study that afternoon, nearly all eyes and attention were focused on the monitor. Lizzie sat at the keyboard of her laptop, faces gathered around it, her fingers hovering over the trackpad. Hale stood behind her, arms folded, the lines on his face cut deep with exhaustion. Marcus leaned against the wall, restless, watching the screen as if it might bite. Richard Kane stood apart, near the window, his silhouette framed against the dull light outside. Catherine sat in the armchair beside the desk, one hand clutching a folded handkerchief, the other trembling on her lap. The only sound was the low hum of the air conditioner. Lizzie's voice broke the silence. "Wallet loaded, amount verified." She hesitated, eyes flicking to Hale. "Half a Bitcoin, equivalent to about 90 million naira, confirmed." Richard turned slightly. "Do it." Lizzie swallowed, nodded once and pressed send. A thin progress bar crawled across the screen. Seconds stretched. No one moved. Then the transaction confirmed, a soft chime, almost cheerful. Lizzie exhaled. Transfer complete. On the screen, the numbers vanished from their account, swallowed into the anonymous void of the blockchain. No trace, no return. Silence filled the room again. It wasn't relief. It was absence. The sound of hope leaving with the money. Catherine lowered her face into her hands. "Please, let this bring her back," Marcus muttered, "if they mean to." Hale said nothing. His eyes stayed on the monitor on that single, irreversible line of text. Transaction successful. Richard turned away from the light, his reflection caught faintly in the glass. For all his power, all his wealth, he looked suddenly small, a man watching his empire pay ransom to a ghost. Nobody spoke again. Only the computer's quiet hum filled the silence, steady and indifferent. An hour after the transfer, the house had fallen into uneasy stillness. No messages, no emails, no calls, every second scraped by. Then Richard's private line buzzed. He froze mid-step, eyes narrowing at the unknown number flashing across the screen. Slowly, he lifted the phone to his ear. Richard Kane. For a moment, nothing, just the faint hiss of static. Then a trembling voice. "Dad, it's me." He nearly dropped the phone. "Evelyn?" Her voice came thin, cracked. "Please come get me." Catherine, across the room, looked up sharply. "Richard, is it her?" He nodded, voice shaking now. "Where are you, sweetheart? Tell me where." There was muffled noise, voices in the background. Then a stranger's tone, urgent but kind. "She's safe now, sir. We found her near the old freight warehouse off Lugby Junction. She's weak but alive." Richard didn't wait. "We're coming." The Kane convoy thundered through the wet morning streets. 2 SUVs slicing through traffic, their engines roaring like fury itself. Inside, Richard sat rigid beside Hale, his phone clenched in one hand, eyes fixed ahead. Catherine whispered prayers under her breath. Marcus drove fast but steady, his jaw set, while Lizzie traced live coordinates on her tablet. The convoy screeched to a halt beside a long, rusted warehouse. There were a handful of people around. At the far end, tucked behind them, curled up against the wall, sat Enkay, barefoot, trembling, a torn scarf around her wrist. When the few crowd gave way and the light hit her face, she flinched and raised a weak hand to shield her eyes. "Evelyn!" Catherine's voice cracked as she ran forward. Richard followed, slower, as if afraid she might vanish if he moved too fast. Evelyn's lips quivered, her voice thin as air. "Dad?" He gathered her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You're safe now. You're home." Behind them, Hale scanned the floor, a scrap of rope, a discarded blindfold. Near the back door, faint tire marks leading out toward the road. Marcus crouched, frowning. Whoever was here left early, clean. Hale nodded grimly. Before dawn, the empty warehouse groaned softly. No one left to catch. Back at the mansion, Evelyn had freshened up and lay on her bed, a blanket drawn to her chin, almost covering an injury he'd sustained. The doctor had finished a quick round and confirmed there were no other serious physical injuries. Catherine sat beside her, stroking her hair. Ruth hovered nearby, face pale, eyes wide with guilt. Evelyn stirred faintly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, Mum. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Ruth said, "It was just to catch fun. It was supposed to be for my birthday. We were partying when the commotion started. Next thing I know, everything went dark. I woke later in a dark warehouse." Catherine's breath hitched. "Oh, my baby." Ruth's tears came fast. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn. It's all my fault." She reached out, clutching Evelyn's hand. "I didn't know this was going to happen. I swear I didn't." Evelyn closed her eyes. "It's not your fault, babe." At the doorway, Richard stood watching, silent, unreadable. Hale beside him, arms folded, gaze distant. "Sir," Hale's voice was low, "you know we are going to need to ask her a few questions." Richard didn't turn. "Not today, boy. That can wait for now." Then his eyes softened. A faint exhale escaped him, a mixture of gratitude and weary relief. Perhaps, he thought, I should have sent the money a lot earlier. He turned away, shoulders heavy but calm for the first time in days. The Kane mansion felt alive again. Peace had returned, or something pretending to be it. 3 quiet days had passed since Evelyn's return. The mansion looked alive again, gardens trimmed, curtains open, the staff moving with cautious relief. Catherine had started smiling again, Evelyn's recovery swift and fast. Ruth, too, had left to her maternal home. Thank God Evelyn is found. That morning, as he reviewed estate reports in his study, the gate guard brought in a single sealed envelope. No stamp, no sender, just his name scrawled in bold ink, R. Kane. He slid it open with his letter knife. Inside lay a single card, thick paper, the handwriting fierce, gouged deep into the fiber. "You dare whisper my name in your circus? Thought we'd all moved on, but you had to disrespect me with a kidnap accusation, poking around in my dealings. You've declared war, brother. Prepare yourself." For a moment, everything stilled. The hum of the air conditioner faded beneath the pounding of his pulse. Richard reread the words, disbelief hardening into dread. How could he know? They had been careful, too careful. Hale's team had worked in silence. He reached for his phone and dialed. The line clicked alive. Hale's voice came rough with fatigue. "Sir, it's Drake," Richard said, his tone low. "He sent me a letter. Says I've declared war." A pause. "He knows?" "Yes, he knows. I don't understand how." Hale's voice sharpened slightly. "We've been clean, Richard. No open traces, no digital chatter from our end. Maybe one of his informants heard a whisper, or he's been watching your movements since the start." Richard exhaled, pacing. "Then our silence means nothing." "Sir," Hale said carefully, "you need to stay calm. Don't feed him a move he can anticipate." Richard stopped near the window, the letter still in his hand. "You don't understand, Hale. This man doesn't threaten. He declares." At that moment, the door opened and Evelyn entered. Her voice was soft. "Dad?" He turned, quickly sliding the card behind a folder. "What is it?" Evelyn stepped closer, phone in hand. "You should see this. It's everywhere." She handed him the screen. A blog headline glared up at him. "Rumor? Kane family in crisis. Possible kidnapping linked to business feud." He scrolled. Unconfirmed sources suggest a member of the Kane family may have been abducted and quietly returned. Whispers hint the hand of an old ally turned rival, one Alexander Drake. Catherine appeared at the doorway, startled by Evelyn's tone. What's happening? Some gossip post, Richard said evenly, forcing composure. Ignore it. But his mind had already connected the dots. That's how Drake found out. The leak wasn't from them, it was from the noise outside. Hale's voice came faintly through the phone still in his hand, unheard by the women, but clear enough. What was that? Did you say Drake's name on a blog? Richard's jaw tightened. Yes, it's public now. I don't know how anyone got a wind of anything, but it is public now. A grim pause. Hale's tone dropped. Then we're past damage control. Catherine frowned. What did you say? He turned, smiling faintly, hiding the tension in his eyes. Nothing, love, just business talk. Evelyn looked uncertain. People are saying terrible things online, Dad. Shouldn't we issue a statement? No, he said quickly. Let it die quietly. She nodded, confused, and left with Catherine, the door closing behind them. Richard sank into his chair, phone still pressed to his ear. Hale's voice came low and steady. Sir, whatever happens next, let me know. This Drake guy seems like someone who won't stop at words. Richard looked down at the crushed envelope on his desk, then toward the rain-damp window. Neither will I, he said quietly. I am not one to cower in the face of war. The line clicked dead, and somewhere far away, the first ripples of a larger storm began to move. Later that day, deep in the night, Hale was seated before his desktop in his home office. The guilt of unable to find Evelyn's abductors and prevent the ransom gnawed at him. On the monitor, the old party ground footage replayed in silence. Ruth's selfie video, the last known clip before the chaos. Hale dragged the slider back again, slowing the frame rate. Laughter. Neon flashes. Evelyn's startled glance over her shoulder. Then the blur, the panic, the fall. He froze the image, Ruth's hand holding the phone. Even in that split second, it was too steady. Hale frowned, adjusting playback speed again. The phone dropped, too clean, too centered. He leaned closer, muttering, something's off here. The details itched at him, the angle, the timing, the way Ruth's voice carried through the chaos without cracking. Evelyn's scream was raw, Ruth's was calculated. He sat back slowly, the chair creaking beneath him. Instinct screamed that the story didn't fit, but instinct wasn't proof. Not yet. He rubbed his eyes, whispered to the empty room, show me what I'm missing. The video looped again, Ruth's frozen smile staring back at him through the pixel noise. At same time, 2 states away in Enugu, Ruth Sidney sat cross-legged on her bed, phone pressed to her ear. A man's voice crackled through the speaker, rough and lazy, the accent faint but sharp. Nice job, Ruth. She'll wear that scar forever. You're colder than me. Ruth smiled faintly. It wasn't about coldness, Rico. It was about balance. Balance? He chuckled. You call that balance? She's my cousin, Ruth said, her tone even, detached. Always the golden one, prettier, louder, adored in every room we walked into. I was the afterthought. I protected her once. She repaid me by making me invisible. Rico whistled softly. So this was personal. Ruth leaned back a little against the headboard, eyes half closed. It was overdue. She needed to feel small, just once. To wake up to pain that doesn't wash off in a mirror. The ransom was just a bonus, and my 50% a reward for a job well planned. He laughed. You're darker than I thought. Not dark, she said, voice smooth. Just tired of being the shadow. The line went quiet for a beat. You really fooled them, Rico said finally. The crying, the trembling, pure art. She smiled, soft and cold. All performances are, and mine just saved me a fortune. The line went dead. Ruth sat there for a moment, phone still in hand, then let out a slow exhale. Her face softened back into its perfect mask, the tender cousin, the broken survivor. She rose, walked to the mirror, and stared at her reflection. No guilt, no fear, just calm. Back in Hale's office, he sat before the paused frame, Ruth's face frozen mid-smile, a single bead of sweat running down his temple. His gut told him the truth, but his hands had nothing to hold on to. Inside Ruth's comfy bedroom, she brushed her hair from her face, smiling faintly as she set her phone on the nightstand. Hale's whisper filled the quiet office. Something's not right with you. Ruth's smile lingered, untouched by conscience, the faint curve of someone untouchable, invisible, and utterly certain of her own victory. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel to encourage us to make more. Also, hit the bell icon to get notified when new stories drop.